Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. It's Wednesday night, June 21st. We're going to call this Week 6A of Political Science 1013 for the summer term on the first 7-week schedule. Okay, everybody, we're through Exam 3. We've got about 10 or 12 days left on the term. We've sent an announcement out for the final exam on July 1st and 2nd. So the term is coming to an end. There will be one final discussion this Monday and Tuesday, the 26th and 27th. And announcements about all this have gone out. They should be in your inbox, and they're up on the course website in the announcements area. Everyone, the main political news this week, or for the past few days, has been the plea bargain accepted by the president's son, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden pled guilty to 3 charges, 2 misdemeanor tax charges, one charge that he did not admit his drug use when he was filling out a gun permit application. So he's pled guilty to all that and is expected to get a couple of years probation. Republicans generally think that Hunter Biden has gotten off easy, and that it is a sort of a sweetheart deal, reflecting the fact that the Biden administration controls the Justice Department. Democrats say that the whole thing is just a distraction from the charges against Trump. The main accusation against Hunter Biden is that he traded on his father's name and acted as an influence peddler. And some Republicans insist that Joe Biden must have benefited from this. So we haven't heard the last of this, you can be sure, as both parties fling charges and countercharges at each other with the 2024 elections coming up. Okay, everybody, the final exam on July 1st and 2nd will cover the class notes for Units 7 and 8 on the Supreme Court and on Congress. There are those class notes and 3 articles to read in addition. One is from the New York Times by Carlos Lozada. It amounts to a book review of a recent book about the Supreme Court by a reporter for CNN, Joan Biskupic, I believe her name is, 9 Black Robes. And the article also discusses a book from 40 years ago about the Supreme Court called The Brethren. Bob Woodward, one of the reporters who broke the Watergate story, was a co-author of that book. In a nutshell, the article is discussing what the Supreme Court may do now going forward, now that there are 6 conservative Republican appointees with a majority control over the Supreme Court. What court cases from the past will they reconsider, and what precedents might they overturn? All right? Now then, you have 2 articles to do with Congress. One of them is from the website of Matthew Iglesias, 17 Thoughts about the Debt Ceiling Deal. Okay, so he'll go into some detail about the agreement that was just reached the end of last month to go ahead and raise the statutory debt ceiling and allow the government to borrow more money so that the government would not go into default on its obligations. And you'll learn quite a bit about that from looking at this article by Iglesias. Then finally, you have an article by 2 reporters from the Wall Street Journal. And remember, you have access to the Wall Street Journal through the McKee Library subscription. We sent you instructions on how to do that back at the beginning of the term. This article says that, the debt ceiling matter has been resolved, but the next challenge that Speaker McCarthy faces is to avoid a government shutdown, because some of the most conservative Republicans still are not satisfied with the debt ceiling deal. They want their party to press harder on spending cuts, and this may all come to a head if we cannot get a budget passed by the beginning of the fiscal year on October 1st. We may have a government shutdown. All right, so you're asked to look at those 3 things and expect 10 or 15 questions on those, in addition to more questions on your class notes from Units 7 and 8 for the final exam on July 1st and 2nd. Everybody, this Monday and Tuesday, the 26th and 27th, we'll hold our last discussion, our 5th out of 5 discussions. Many of you need these points, so you should be sure to take part in the discussion if you possibly can. You're asked to discuss the Supreme Court's abortion decision from almost exactly 1 year ago today, in which the Roe versus Wade decision from the 1970s was overturned. And you're given links to 2 pro and con articles about this question. So, most people have had some thoughts about that, I would presume. Many people have strong opinions, so I hope you will take part in that discussion, which will be our last of 5 discussions coming up on Monday and Tuesday, the 26th and 27th. Everybody, Unit 7 then is on the Supreme Court. I'll have more to say about Unit 8 on Congress next time, but let's talk very briefly about what we try to do in Unit 7 on the Supreme Court. We start out by talking about the court system in general, the federal courts in particular, where the Supreme Court fits in, how the Supreme Court does its business, how it decides whether or not to accept a case, what its jurisdiction consists of, and that is almost entirely on appeal. You'll be introduced to such terms as majority, dissenting, and concurring opinions, so pay close attention to that. Now we go on to discuss the court as a political institution. Okay? Some people say it shouldn't be political at all, but for better or worse, it has become political. In recent times, every vacancy that has to be filled on the Supreme Court has become a highly politically charged matter. And everyone is fully aware of which justices were appointed by Republican presidents and which by Democrats. Okay? The abortion issue has a good deal to do with that. We also discuss the manner in which Supreme Court nominations to the Supreme Court, often take the form of recognition of various groups of people, categories of people within the population. Pay close attention also, everybody, to the discussion of the concept of judicial review. That's the major power the Supreme Court has to determine whether something is constitutional or not, and the notions of judicial activism and restraint. Watch for that terminology and discussion of the meaning of those terms. Now, everybody, we finished the Supreme Court unit by looking at 4 so-called landmark decisions of the Supreme Court. These are decisions that have major historical and political significance. We begin by talking about the Brown versus Board of Education decision in the 1950s that declared segregation of public schools unconstitutional. We look at the Citizens United decision over campaign finance and the Obergefell decision over same-sex marriage. And we conclude with Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Center, which is the decision we were talking about that overturned Roe versus Wade from almost 50 years ago. Well, it's 50 years ago by now. We go into a good bit of detail on this. Everybody, the Supreme Court really was somewhat fractured, although they did vote to overturn versus Wade and to permit the restrictions on abortion that the state of Mississippi wanted to impose. There were 5 different opinions written in the Dobbs case, and we go into some detail about all those opinions. There were 4 by justices in the majority, and a joint opinion issued by the 3 justices in the minority. We conclude by discussing the matter of the leak of the draft of the opinion that came out a few weeks before the opinion itself actually was handed down, which caused quite a furore, as you might imagine. All right, everybody, that then is what we try to do in Unit 7. We'll talk a bit more about Unit 8 next time over the weekend. In the meantime, I hope you will take part in the discussion on Monday and Tuesday, the 26th and 27th. Don't forget that term papers are due July 1st. I've exchanged emails with a handful of students who are planning to do term papers with regard to their topic. All right? So, we'll try to get another announcement out Sunday evening into Monday morning. Hope you'll take part in the discussion on Monday and Tuesday. So, take it easy. We'll talk to you in a few days.